Hello, my name is Gia. I am Gia G. Dixon, the founder of Dixon Etiquette. I'm an etiquette and image consultant based here in Los Angeles, specifically the Hollywood Hills, and was trained at a British finishing school. British standards are what set the tone and influence a lot of continental etiquette that you are familiar with today. If you are familiar, here is everything you need to know about fine dining in the formal, social, and professional setting. Why is it important? You might be a guest at a wedding, hosting a client at an important business meeting, or on a first date. You can be meeting the parents or want to feel self-assured when walking into a fine dining establishment. Not being 100% confident at the table can be scary, but it is really easy if you just stay to the very end. Follow along with these simple steps to get all the information and do not forget to use it. Practice, live it, and when you are faced with a ton of utensils, you know exactly what to do and can focus on the conversation and company. So I want you to take out a pen, a notebook, and a cup of tea or coffee, a adaptogenic drink or green juice, whatever you like to imbibe, and turn off whatever device you're holding or looking at and pay full attention to this because this is very important. It's going to benefit you so greatly. You can use it now, you can use it in the future, use it every time you eat because everybody needs to eat. So let's get started. Here is everything you need to know about fine dining in any formal or professional or social setting. We're gonna go over setting the table manners that remove awkwardness from social and professional interactions, unfamiliar or challenging foods. Then we're gonna have a little surprise at the end. I want you to practice this at home with your loved ones and by yourself. Everything starts at home. I rather you practice and make mistakes in a casual setting. When you practice, you get into the habit, and when faced with the real life situation, you will handle things beautifully, smoothly, and naturally. This is a Western style place setting. Utensils are placed in order of use from the outside, working your way in. Forks go on the left of the plate and spoons to the right. The plates, cutlery, and napkin should be placed 3 to 5 centimeters away from the edge, or about half an inch. And always try to allow about 30 centimeters or about a foot between guests, so everyone should have equal space. If you want to take your table setting to the next level, you can get a ruler and place each utensil the same distance apart. So if you get a mirror, it should look exactly the same on both sides. Everything will be equidistant. If the table is rounded, you set it with the shape of the table so it cascades to the edge, and if it is a straight edge table, you keep the table setting straight also. I want to see if you can name all the implements, but we're going to go through all of them nonetheless. Number 1 is the napkin. Next is the starter fork. Next is the fish fork. Next is the main course fork. Next is the main course knife. Then the fish knife, the starter knife, the soup spoon, dessert implements, water, white wine glass, and some things you don't see in this photo are a champagne glass, a red wine glass, a coffee mug, a port glass, but those can also be squared away or being served later. And you will see more examples of these in a bit. I'll show you different variations of different table settings. So here is how you hold your utensils. The cutlery should be held correctly, i.e. the knife in the right hand and the fork in the left, with the prongs or tines pointing downwards. When eating, the food should be pushed onto the back of the fork with the knife rather than scooped, so don't shovel, spear. This includes rice, quinoa, or couscous, and someone asked me recently if you should point the tines up and shovel couscous or the rice or the quinoa. It's just a matter of practice. Make sure that the tines are facing down and scoop with your knife. You put the couscous, the rice, or the quinoa onto your fork and practice eating it that way. I know it might not be the easiest thing to do, but it takes a lot of practice, and if you just put the effort at home, you'll nail it at a formal dinner in case you have to show up somewhere where there are important individuals and you never know. Don't want to make a fool of yourself when everybody else is doing it and you're the only person. It might be awkward. Here is what not to do. Some people have a tendency to put their index finger past the handle, or what is called the bridge of the cutlery. You want to be about in the middle of the bridge. A beautiful table setting is a sign of respect for your guest or guests. You present your best china or silver or your favorite ceramic or stoneware pieces. The bread plate, as you see, has the knife on the right with the blade facing left. Sometimes you might see the orientation of the bread knife on top of the plate with the blade facing down toward the edge of the table. Either is correct. A way to remember the setting of a bread and drinks are B and D with your hands lowercase. Bread on the left and drinks on the right. You can also remember BMW, bread, meal, water, wine from left to right. All beverages will be on the right, no matter what. So champagne, coffee, everything. When I was in Paris, I was at a blackout restaurant where there are no lights and blind people run the place. You are literally served food in the dark. And the guy on my right drank all the water, and I kept accidentally holding his hand. So I picked up my water the very first time and it was full. And then later during the dinner, I picked up my water and it felt really, really light, and there was only like a sip left. Apparently, he drank my water. And so I ended up throwing back the wine and stumbling home because I was so thirsty. I could not have any idea of how to get service because nobody could see. You can't flag the waiters down with a look of the eye. You're not supposed to wave or do a check sign in the air. You're supposed to give them the eye contact and let them know that you're ready, or that you need help. Nobody can see you, and I didn't want to scream in French. Remember, your drink is on the right to avoid sharing bacteria with someone, and your water glass might be a goblet or a straight down Duralex style glass. So the way to tell if your glass is meant for water is that it will be directly above your main course dining knife. So if you are being served white wine, it is the smaller of the two glasses and will go to the bottom right of the water glass. The red wine sits to the left of the white wine glass. And if a toast is to be made at dinner, a champagne flute, usually some type of champagne flute, whatever the design, will be placed above all the glasses the furthest away. So it should be the one that is the hardest to reach. I have two images here for the drinking glasses because the image on the left has it right above the main course dining knife. That's the water glass. Where on the right, they're trying to fit in the font so that you can see all the different labels, but it has more variation of the different types of table settings that you might see. The rule for toast is to always let the host be the first one to make a toast. However, if there is a monarch in the room, for rights of protocol, I'm going to share this. I never know who I'm teaching. When there is a monarch in the room, they are the first one that you toast. And always let the host be the first one to make a toast. If a toast is made in your honor, do not lift or drink your glass, but say thank you afterwards. Do raise your glass even if you are not drinking alcohol. And when toasting, do not clink glasses with everyone around the table. Just raise your glass to drink from where you are. Do not tap on the rim of your glass with a piece of cutlery, because the host or hostess might really treasure their glassware and you want to take care of their things. So just get people's attention by simply standing up and saying, it's time for a toast. Hold the glass from the stem, and the lower the better, so it doesn't heat up your drink. You don't get fingerprints on it, and you don't get the condensation on your hands, and then your hands become clammy and cold. So in the 800s in the Nordics, the Vikings would smash their goblets against each other very hard and spill liquid into one another's glass to make sure they were not poisoned. They would make the meanest, most intimidating Viking face and then say, Skål! So I used to live in Copenhagen, for those of you who don't know. Death to your enemies in Old Norse. And then they would drink the mead. Hitting your glasses really hard together was a sign of trust. You can always remember the fork goes on the left because fork has 4 letters, as the word left also has 4 letters. To remember the knife and the spoon go on the right, the same rule applies. K-N-I-F-E, R-I-G-H-T, the same amount of letters, S-P-O-O-N. And the bread plate has the only knife on your left side for the butter. On your right will always face in towards the plate to prevent accidents toward your own fingers and to respect your neighbors, to not give them any signs of aggression. And it was said to have originally started with the British tradition of never having a pointed edge on the table pointed towards someone, namely the monarch. The royals never have square sandwiches, so the corners would be rounded and cut so that it's not a threat whether it's facing towards them or away. Corners would typically be pointed away because tradition has it that anyone presenting them with pointed-edged food is trying to overthrow the throne of England, and it's a threat to the Queen. The utensils atop are for dessert. You can remember they're for dessert or pudding because they are so far away from all the other utensils. Having only a dessert spoon or fork, one or the other, is perfectly fine and completely up to the host or hostess. Depends on the menu. If only ice cream is being served, then there will not be a need for a fork, but if there's a pie a la mode, you'll need both. At a wedding or a big celebration such as a birthday or even at someone's home, there might be a placemat or runner or chargers. It can be overwhelming. A charger or service plate, which is the technical formal name, is like a big plate, but you don't eat off of it. It might be simple and elegant or have an ornate design. This can be decorative or to protect the table from unwanted heat or condensation. It protects if you have a little spill on the edge of your plate so the charger collects the mess rather than your beautiful tablecloth. Placemats are more for casual settings, like breakfast or lunch, but for a formal meal, you will not see a placemat. White is the most formal for tablecloths, but you might see a different design for something more festive during the holiday season. Starting from the bottom plate is the main dining plate for the main course. Then the salad plate is the one on top of the main dining plate. Then on top would be the soup bowl, and if you are the host, you put it in which order you would enjoy. Years ago, I was at a bar mitzvah and a boy was sitting next to me, and the dinner was buffet style. So he got up, he brought all of his utensils with him, all of his plates, and he had it was like a few layers of plates too. And he got his soup and his salad, and he put his salad all around the bowl, and all of the adults were laughing at the table. And I didn't understand why, because I was little, I was 8 years old or so, and he was warming up his salad with his soup. You can count all the tools in this picture to make an estimated guess of how many courses are being served just by looking at the place setting. You visually count all the pieces and it will tell you. There are 5, because bread is not counted as a course. You start with a soup, then a starter could be a salad or something else, then a fish course, then a main course, and finally dessert. Formal dinner has at least 4 courses. It will have a soup, starter, a main, and then a dessert. If you are hosting a dinner, be sure to plan your menu before setting your table so you do not have too many things. Your menu will determine the setting of the table and will tell the guests how many courses there are. If you're having a main dish, a dessert, and salad, then lay out only the pieces you need. You can even set the table the night before, because the day of, you'll be so busy with the decorations, the cooking or catering, hosting people, and so on. Put your glassware down last because it collects a lot of dust. You can set the day of with all the glassware and the decoration and everything else the night before. If you are at a banquet or charity event and the table is really long, you might notice this. When it comes to the table decorations in between dishes being served, the rule is usually 6 to 8 inches high. This counts for flowers, vases, or candles so that people could still see each other across the table and connect over the decor. If the table is especially lengthy, they will be able to spread out the decorations in between people to avoid obstructions. If you're setting the table, make sure to do decorations the very, very last thing. Start your meal by entering from the left of your chair. When you pull the chair out, do it as quietly as possible. Sit down on 3/4 of the chair and pretend there's a little puppy behind you. So you don't want to squish it. Once you've seated, you will see a napkin in the middle of your plate, and it might come in beautiful different types of folds and designs with the napkin setting and embroidery. You can even have a fresh little flower on top and wrapped around, so have fun with your napkin if you are hosting. Place your napkin on your lap after everyone has seated. Fold your napkin in half with the opening towards you, or it can be opening towards the table if that makes you comfortable also. Either works. As the guest, it is polite to wait until everyone at the table has been served and your host starts eating or indicates to do so. In Italy, it is allowed to eat your food right away when you receive it because they say the pasta is so good. That's the rumor. You also might see a napkin on the left if there are tons of bowls and plates set on the table so that the napkin is not starchy enough to stand up. That's perfectly okay. And then you might see a napkin underneath the charger plate, as you can see here. But it forces your guests to lift your plate and has all the plates slide around. So it's also still perfectly okay to do this if that's the way it's presented. And these are just different options you might see. Place the napkin folded in half rectangle wise or triangle orientation, whichever makes sense to you. And what you want to do is use the inside of it so that it's hidden and it's not showing a mess. Here's also an example of what not to do. I've seen people unbutton their shirt to put it in the middle of their shirt in between the gapes. I've also seen people tuck it into their trousers before eating, so avoid doing any of these things. Once the meal has begun, it is impolite to reach over someone else's plate for an item such as seasoning or a food platter. As you can see in this image, it's more considerate to ask someone for the item to be passed to you. If someone asks for salt, bring both the salt and pepper together in front of the person who asked for it. Don't just give the salt alone or pass it in their hand. It makes it awkward if you touch hands and just keeps things sanitary also. It's best to dab your napkin and avoid wiping using the inside fold to hide stains. Don't use your tablecloth to wipe your face. I have seen this happen because sometimes the napkin and the tablecloth looks the same. It happens. Leave your napkin in your lap until everyone is finished. If you need to get up and excuse yourself, whether you have to take a call or use the water closet, avoid setting it down on your chair for sanitary reasons. We have zero idea how many people have sat down on your chair if it's at a restaurant or at a public place. Put it to your left. Don't push your chair away from the table unless you are getting up. A way to show the servers that you are getting up and returning and that you are not finished with your dish, put your utensils in resting position. I will show you that in a bit. And in France, it's a hard rule to never say anything when leaving the table for a break because it is so shameful. You're not supposed to bring attention to it. You sit down and focus on your meal until you are finished. If you really need to use the lavatory, what you do is before or after the dinner, use it. Next is resting position. It will look like this. It's having both the top of your utensils pointed inwards. So put your utensils down when you are masticating or chewing during a formal dinner. You can have your wrists on the table, but never have your full arms resting or your elbows on the table. If you belch, excuse yourself to no one in particular. Don't chew ice or inedible parts of the meal. When in doubt, use a utensil in lieu of your fingers. If there's hair in your food or something moving, do not say anything, just remove it and carry on. Don't spoil someone else's meal by talking about it. If you need to remove food from your teeth or blow your nose, go to the water closet, the restroom. If you notice food in someone else's teeth, only point it out to the person in the utmost subtle regard. If you don't love the meal, always look for the silver lining and then tell the host you had a good time. Enjoy your company, enjoy the conversation. Nothing that touched your mouth should ever directly touch the table. If you spill something, don't make a big deal out of it. Offer to pay for the cleaning, if necessary, in private. If they say no, don't keep insisting. If you decide to pass on food being offered, simply say no thanks. No explanation is needed. Learn to try new foods when you have the opportunity. You may be confronted with unfamiliar choices in the future. A rule I have is try a little bit. Don't put a huge portion of the plate if you're not sure you want to commit. In Western-style dining, unless you are attending a barbecue or an informal buffet, it is frowned upon to use your fingers rather than cutlery to eat. Always refrain from slurping, clanging your silverware on your plate, scraping it loudly, setting your utensils or glasses down noisily. Be as gentle as possible. No matter what you do, you are a gentle lady, you are a gentleman. This is my pet peeve also. Making noise, any unnecessary noise at the table, say like if you're chewing loudly, it can bother people immensely. And if you clang around on your scraping your plate, but that's my personal pet peeve. Do not talk with food in your mouth. I know someone who does this all the time and they always choke and they never learn. So you can spit food when you talk. Keep your lips together when there's food or drink inside. When you are finished, you can put your utensils in the finished position. The sharp knife faces inwards and fork prongs facing up at 6 o'clock position. 5 o'clock is also perfectly fine. Place the napkin on the table neatly on the left side of your plate. Never put the napkin on top of your plate or in your glass. No need to crumple it, just make it neat on the left side of your plate. So as you can see here, this is finished position. 6 o'clock is what I personally prefer to do because it looks neat and it's not supposed to be touching any food if there's anything left on your plate. So scoot the food over somewhere, put your utensils down with the handles facing 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock is perfectly fine. Continental rules are like in Germany, when you're finished, you put it at 3 o'clock. But here, we're sticking to 5 or 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock is what I personally do because it looks very intentional. It looks neat, where 5 o'clock looks like you're trying to look nice. Leave your plate where it is. Don't push it away or stack your dirty dishes. Do not ask for a doggy bag. If they offer something free in a restaurant, as they would bread, do not ask for more. It is complimentary. So if you need a toothpick, discreetly ask for one on your way out and use it in the restroom. All grooming is ever done in private, at home or at the water closet. How to eat. Here are the guidelines for how to eat these different types of foods. We're going to go over a handful of them. For bread and rolls, never serve your bread first. Never serve your own plate first. Always pick up the basket and offer it to the person on your left. Then serve yourself, put a roll on your plate, and then offer to the right, and everything is to be passed to the right. That way everything goes in order and it's really easy. There's no chaos. Your bread roll should be placed on the side plate where the bread plate is, the left of your setting. Put the butter on your plate first, not directly onto the bread, and then use your knife to spread it. Start eating the bread by ripping or tearing pieces off, and tear one piece off at a time. Don't ever cut your whatever food that you have on your plate, don't cut them ahead of time. Cut as you go. So if you rip one piece off, then apply some butter, then rip another piece off after you're done eating that, and apply more butter, if that's what you prefer. For sauce, do not dip your food or utensils straight into the sauce if there is a separate dish for sauce alone. Put some on your plate with the serving utensil or ask for one. Then use the tip of your knife to apply it on the food that's already cut on your fork. If you want more sauce, you can always add more, but make sure everyone else has some. Soup. Always hold the soup spoon with your thumb across the handle, or what is known as the bridge of the spoon, and move it away from you rather than towards you. Leave the spoon in the bowl when you have finished. Under no circumstances should you blow on the soup to cool it down. Always use the cheese knife provided to cut cheese from a communal board, not from your own knife. Round cheese, such as camembert, should be treated like a cake. Cut triangular portions. It is correct to slice a whole large cheddar or Stilton horizontally, but if already cut like a cake, follow suit. With a wedge cheese such as brie, cut slivers lengthways. Never cut the nose off a triangular wedge. Stilton is usually sliced, but if a spoon is provided, scoop a portion of cheese from the middle. So as I like to say, the simple version, make sure you cut it in a way that everybody gets an even amount, an equal piece. A wedge of lemon usually accompanies fish or seafood. Squeeze the lemon against the tines of a fork to release the juice. Keep the lemon wedge low over the plate, cupping a hand around while squeezing to avoid spraying neighbors. My dad used to spray me all the time with lemon. The meal would start off that way and I would be blind for half of the meal. Here are unfamiliar and tricky foods. So in formal dining situations, it's very likely that at some point you will encounter unfamiliar cuisine or food that can potentially be very messy to eat. For a full guide to tricky foods, please consult Debrett's. It's a wonderful book that will guide you through all types of protocol, and this is where a lot of the advice was sourced from. Asparagus. Unless asparagus is a vegetable accompaniment to a dish or covered in sauce, it should be eaten with the fingers. The asparagus should be picked up towards the blunt end of the stem, the budded tip dipped in any accompanying sauce, and eaten bite by bite. If you are ever in doubt, use your utensils. It's perfectly fine too. Next is snails or escargot. I am used to eating not escargot, but a smaller sea snail growing up in a soup, and it was really good. It was like clams, but escargot is quite large and it's very different, so usually served with the shells intact. I am used to having it with the shells removed, but sometimes it's served with shells. They require a little manual dexterity to consume, and use the special implements that typically go with them. If they already have the shell removed, you can just use a fork and knife, but if they have their shells on still, grip the shell with the snail tongs and remove the meat with a small two-pronged fork. I love quail eggs growing up. This was like something we had almost every day. Tiny speckled quail's eggs are usually served hard-boiled in their shells with celery salt on the side. Peel off the shell, loosen by crushing the surface lightly, dip into the salt and eat whole. The larger gull's eggs that have a short season, April through May, are eaten the same way. Sushi. Some basic principles should be observed when eating sushi. Soy sauce is poured into a saucer and then a small amount of wasabi paste separately. Keep them separate. Sushi is all about the separation of flavors, and the chef will be upset if they see you mixing the two together. If you're in Japan, it's okay to eat sushi with your hands as long as it is sanitary, you wash your hands, and you can see other people are doing it. Sashimi, or sliced raw fish on its own, is picked up with chopsticks, dipped into sauce, and then eaten, if possible, in one mouthful. Make sure that you keep your sushi together and don't break it up into parts. And if you are in doubt, once again, use your utensils. Sushi rolls and nigiri should also be picked up with the chopsticks and eaten whole. Caviar should be enjoyed in small quantities and not eaten in bulk. As you can see, this is one of the black ones, Russian sturgeons, and the whiter, a little bit larger eggs are more mellow, or these ones are really salty. It may be served with blinis, or small savory pancakes. A good caviar should not taste salty. Test it by placing a small amount on the fleshy part of the hand between thumb and index finger. It should not smell. Once opened, caviar should be stored in a glass container, often in a champagne flute, in the fridge, never in the tin. Oysters are served on a bed of ice, accompanied by fresh lemon wedges and sometimes mignonette, shallot and red wine vinegar dressing. Pick up the shell and bring the widest end to the lips. Tilt and slide the entire contents of the shell directly into the mouth from the shell. Alternatively, you can also hold the oyster in the left hand and spear the contents with a fork. Sometimes special oyster forks are provided, the little ones. Then drink the remaining juice from the shell. Either chew or swallow it down in one. Opinions vary about which method is best. Mussels. Use an empty mussel shell as a pincer to extract the other mussels from their shells. Using a fork is perfectly acceptable. The sauce around the mussels can be eaten with a spoon. Like soup, put all the empty shells on the spare plate or bowl provided and use the finger bowl as required. A whole lobster in its shell will typically arrive at the table already cut into 2 halves, allowing easy access to the flesh. Use a knife and fork, or just a fork, while holding the shell steady with the hand. The big claws usually come cracked, but if not, use special lobster crackers and then pull out the meat with a fork. If you want to get meat out of the smaller parts, use a lobster pick. As for seating, the order is most likely male, female, male, female. Sometimes there will be an agenda, say in the Regency era, for example, back when people had to be chaperones during courtship. If the royal court wanted to encourage the pairing of a couple, they would seat them next to each other. Or if they thought a couple would get on well, they would have them placed adjacent to each other. And each course they would get up and mix things around by changing seats to keep things spicy. You can try this at home if you host people and your own dinner party to keep things interesting. If you have little place cards, you can make them yourself by folding a piece of paper, write each guest's name and then another guest's name on the inside so that when they flip it over, they can get up and look for their new seat in the next course. So try to make sure it's male, female if you can. Elbows. Men also went to finishing school, and it looks a little different sometimes. It can be the military, and specifically Her Majesty's Royal Air Force is where Andrew Dickson served. Mr. Dickson, can you please enlighten everyone with the elbow story?
Yes, people who were on naval ships in the ocean, to stop their food sliding around, would use their elbows to keep the plate still.
Oh.
So then when the Royal Navy was recruiting for skilled seamen on land, they would look for people who had their elbows on the table as they ate. And then they would press gang them by hitting them over the head with a wooden club and force them to join the Navy. So it was self-preservation. You didn't eat with your elbows on the table in case you found yourself waking up on a Royal Navy ship.
So if you've seen The Simpsons, one of the early episodes, Bart joins a boy band and he becomes really famous. And they have a hit song and it's called Yvonne et Nuage. And they're wondering, what does it mean? What does it stand for? Or what are they saying? And then they realize it's join the Navy backwards.
Oh my.
The British military also did this to lots of American sailors, where they were not considered Americans because America didn't have their independence from the imperial government yet. There are so many military-specific rules where, depending on which branch you carry the port versus drag it on the table when passing it down, the Navy does not stand when the monarch arrives because ships are low, and also men are supposed to wear day suits. I live here in Los Angeles, so it's one of the most casual places in the world to dress, no matter how professional or dressed up the occasion can be. At the opera, I will find women dressed in black tie, in a beautiful black tie evening gown, but men are in jeans or smart casual. I have seen people on dates where the woman is dressed up in a gorgeous dress, spotless shoes, a structured bag, and the man is in flip-flops, a t-shirt, a baseball hat, and jeans. Remember, a t-shirt is underwear. It cheapens the experience for everyone else, and if you're on a first date and the man is not dressed up, remember it is only downhill from here. When I married my husband years ago, he was wearing a day suit as he did in England, here in Los Angeles, and we had not planned on going anywhere, so I asked him why he was dressed up. He said, because it's day. After all, the English invented the shirt and the suit, and everyone else in Western Europe, as Gucci, brought the suit back to Italy, made his designs, they all made their different versions. Dressing appropriately is highly important and shows respect, not just for yourself, but for the people around you that you are meeting. It showcases how you took the time to represent yourself well. I always tell my students to be the best version of who they were yesterday. Growing up, I was raised in a very middle-class household with extremely strict parents. When I was a kid, I would wear basketball shorts, a shirt, and flip-flops. My dad would look at me up and down and say, "Be a lady," or "Dress like a lady." I always asked how, but he never fully had the answer because he could not exactly put his finger on what was not right. He just knew that something was off. Same when I grew up. When I was 18, I moved out. I had my apartment in another city and then eventually another country. I was doing all the adult things, but could not exactly grasp why I was feeling like I was repelling people, where I was giving all the compliments. I dressed somewhat appropriately. I could give a fabulous first impression, but keeping people around and following up was more of the challenge. This was socially and professionally. And years later, I figured it out. After having worked on myself, I went to a party. There were some 22-year-olds who were feeling very insecure, and specifically one where no one said anything, but everyone was still polite because it's a safe space. We're all grown adults, and it's not a big deal if a young woman is having a hard time finding herself, but she was putting people off. And then it hit me. I realized I used to be that girl. It was only after I went to finishing school that I became fully aware of how much I was embarrassing myself. And even simply the way I sat, stood, the way I would say no to people, how uncomfortable I made others feel, my personal image was debilitating. And there are two types of people till this day. The ones who ask me, why etiquette? Who cares? Ironically, these are the people who need it the most. I needed it the most. I wouldn't have thought this is what I need in order to fix this and this. Then there are the other people who ask, how can we have more of this in the world? This is very positive. But both people make me smile nonetheless. And I always answer them with this. Etiquette is not about separating classes and being better than others. It is quite the opposite. It levels the playing field for everyone to have a chance to speak and showcase their individual character. It's about communicating with compassion. Etiquette is about sharing kindness, being of service, and making others feel comfortable. One of my favorite quotes is, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, by Maya Angelou. Always live by the platinum rule. There's the golden rule by Confucius. Do not impose on others what you do not wish for yourself. Then there's the platinum rule. Treat others how they wish to be treated. I personally like to mix modern and traditional methods about etiquette, manners, and protocol. This way, people have a deeper understanding of why we do things that might seem peculiar at first, which is why I teach adults starting at 16 years old, 1-6. So this is the age where we start to understand the outside world a bit more and realize we have a lot of responsibilities to take on, whether it be job interviews, academic interviews, presentations, your physical appearance and comportment altogether, even dating. Making all of these huge frontal lobe decisions of the brain, these are huge life decisions that are made by the frontal lobe, are not necessarily taught in school. And body language is a huge part of what I teach. Speaking properly. I live in Los Angeles. Casual is ever so much the game. So it is so easy to stand out these days, professionally and socially, simply because people are missing out on very basic methods of communication and fundamentals to etiquette that we study. And it blows my mind sometimes how grown adults commit gaffes that would typically be common sense, but it's not general information that everyone can grasp simply by Googling something, because sometimes we're not so sure. Same goes for children. The earlier a child starts developing social intelligence, the more naturally integrated they are with social graces, making lasting impressions and forging those forever friendships and just being polished all around. So I want to remind you that you were born unique. Standing out is not going to be that difficult. It is simply a matter of polishing what you already have and harnessing the skills. If you sign up for any of my classes, you will find your stride and create more opportunities for yourself. You will know when you walk into any type of situation, I just need to do this, this, and this, and everyone will be captivated with you. They will not forget who you are. It was so wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for joining me. Feel free to click on to check out my classes, contact me for any questions, and I hope you to see inside my private course.